Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Going to talk a little bit about a moral quandary adventure I just put my player characters through. It's the second time I've run this scenario. The first time I used it as a opening introductory adventure for Mythic Odysseys of Theros, with a few revisions to a few details. I've kind of made a version of it for Spelljammer. One of a couple little mini quests that the player characters could, unlock and investigate. But of course, as I've described in some of my other update videos on my Spelljammer campaign, they kind of overload themselves and try to take on everything at once. But the point of it is that it's a blind train paradox. Blind, I mean, they don't know it's a train paradox going in. The basic idea is you have a noble lord who wants to impress, their superiors so they can get invited to be part of an ambassadorial mission. And so they want to invite a really cool guest to a big, ball at the castle to, impress the king and show that, hey, they're good at diplomacy. They got this guy who's real isolationist and almost never comes out in public. He got him to come to this party. Let me come with you on your ambassadorial mission to the other world. Yada, yada, yada. And the player characters, because they had done some stuff ingratiating themselves with the cultists of the church that elder has had some association with, they're sent to go try to talk him into coming to the party. They're successful, but he's gonna have them come back in the morning to pick up an RSVP to officially take a note back to the noble to accept the offer. So they come back in the morning and find him dead, strangled to death in his office. The most pertinent clue is that the last thing he was writing in his memoirs, he was saying something about how wondering at the stars and the glories and yada yada yada, and how this god Celestian seems to know even more about the heavens than even Corellon. In this instance, the elder scholar is an old elf, and the first time I ran that, I mixed the gods up a bit, but the first time I ran that, I was with more experienced D&D players who've been playing D&D for some time, and they immediately hit upon the fact that, the gods have been offended. They go off to, the local town temple and convince the priest to give them some sort of, a holy artifact that they can then take to the temple of the offended god as an appeasement and, make peace before anything worse happens. Didn't even have to kill the doppelganger. The person that killed the scholar was basically, I'm using the Nyxborn from Mythic Odysseys of Theros. Basically, Corellon had made a perfect copy of the scholar, except that scholar is Nyxborn. Strangles him, doesn't really know who he is, has no identity, just kind of feels this longing to return back home to his creator. So he wanders off to the local, elf shrine of Corellon, and the elves, being in the presence of a avatar of Corellon, they start kind of acting weird. The thing is these players, they wanted to go, also they have a bunch of other tasks they're trying to do, so they're not really focusing specifically on one storyline because they're kind of bouncing around trying to set up multiple quests at once. And it just seemed to kind of just whiff over their head that there's this religious thing going on. Maybe they should go consult some religious people of the cult that they themselves have already done some work with and have some contacts with. So by the time they do finally get around to tracking down the doppelganger, not an actual doppelganger, but doppelganger as in he's a perfect copy of the original sage. He's already in the process of getting the dryad that inhabits the tree where the shrine is to try to open a trot into the Feywild. This being in the middle of the Rock of Brawl is going to cause some problems. They don't necessarily know the scale to which these problems are, but they're right there. They have the guy, but because he's not actively hostile and is kind of confused, they decide that they want to get some more information, so they go over to the Mages Guild to do some research, which in most circumstances is not a bad play. Dig up some information, be more informed on what's going on. The thing is, though, is they had the killer of this town elder in their hands, and by not taking him out right then and there, ends up leading to, when the trod opens, it causes some stuff that causes an earthquake, which is why a fifth of Brawl's population is now dead. Because, as I said, it's a blind train paradox. Do you take out the one dude who, even though has committed a vile criminal act, is not trying to fight back, is seemingly kind of confused about themselves and where they are, kind of in that weird kind of almost innocent kind of way, despite the act that they had committed upon their creation. Uh, Not knowing that by not taking them out, a whole bunch of other lives are going to be at stake. I mean, the whole concept of the train paradox is you got a train running down some tracks and it splits, and the track that it's on is going to run into a crowd of people, or you can switch the track and have it just run into one person. Which do you choose? What do you do? What's the moral thing to do in that situation? So technically they didn't do anything wrong because, as I said, when they get to the guy, they're still trying to figure out what's going on. They've somewhat distracted themselves by kind of trying to juggle multiple storylines. And since he's not immediately like, you won't stop me, ha ha ha, and throws a firebolt at them kind of shit, they're just kind of a little stymied. They leave a mercenary they had hired as a bodyguard there behind to keep an eye on things, and so that when they get back to the forest after the earthquake, they find that the mercenary had shot and killed the doppelganger Nyxborn guy before he enters the Trod. But unfortunately, the damage is done. One of the players did make the statement of like, I didn't realize that killing him was an option. Well, I mean, you didn't just have to kill him. You could have like forcibly restrained him and hauled him off, or any other number of things, all of which could have been better avoided had they realized that there's a religious angle to this whole thing, and they but I don't know. These players, they're my age, but they're all relatively new to role-playing games, and so they're all I find kind of stuck with kind of video game training where you're used to having all your options real clearly spelled out for you. And part of my style of DMing, though, is I try not to overly spoon feed every last option to the players, because in a way I feel like that's kind of cheating to just tell them, like, here's what you need to do this all the time. Part of role playing is giving them a chance to come up with their own ideas and their own plans and figure things out. At least that's, from my perspective of things. If I want to just like tell them every last thing they're supposed to do step by step and they just follow those instructions, I could have just written a novel about this instead of having it be an open-ended role-playing game scenario. But as an example of the blind train, I guess that's what happens. I can't really fault them for their decision making or anything, and to what degree they want to feel to blame for what occurred because of that chain of decision making, I guess is on them. I mean, this is all just a bunch of imaginary fluff. It's not like they actually did anything or any real people actually died or any kind of stuff like that. It's just a role-playing game and all that yada, yada, yada. I did find it funny when one of them was like, I don't think we're to blame for this. It's like, okay, yeah, you do feel a little guilty, don't you? Maybe it's unfair to have not given them, like, warning that, like, a massive earthquake was going to happen if the guy succeeds in getting the Trod opened. Things would have been much worse if he'd gone through, so I went ahead and awarded him the experience for his, demise, because the mercenary, they did actively chose to, like, okay, we're going to go to the library, but you stay here and keep an eye on things. Since he wouldn't have been there to do that, I still feel like, they earned the XP for, taking him out, kind of a thing, since that was a mercenary they paid coin for. He wasn't just some guy they talked into coming along. It wasn't a sidekick or anything like that. It was just a regular NPC. And as I said in my last little video about the campaign, like, hopefully they'll kind of keep these things in mind. It's just interesting seeing how two different groups of people will tackle the exact same scenario, because, like I said, the more experienced D&D players immediately hit on the fact that, like, the gods are an issue, we got to do something to appease the gods. And so I don't know, I guess that's about it. Something for you to think about in your games if you're trying to design moral quandaries. Was it wrong for the train paradox to be presented blindly? Why would they have known that it was going to cause an earthquake, though? So I feel a lot of it. I mean, even in the beginning of the of the fourth session, I still had a thing triggered where, like, if they make just the right set of decisions at the very beginning, they could still get there in time to avert that. But instead, they wanted to all meet up and talk and discuss things. And so, as they're finally leaving to get on their way to return to the forest, then the earthquake happens on the way. If they had like immediately like hopped back onto the sense of urgency of like, yeah, we can't waste time with this. The shit's too weird. Something's wrong. Go right back there and deal with it. But that's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say, or as the asteroid city and spell space crumbles. I don't know. Anyway, as I said, that should be about it. Leave thoughts and comments below. Check out Drive Through RPG and the Total Party Skills publisher page, and pick up one of my 22 books that I have available for your reading and playing enjoyment. And until next time, stay.